Welcome to Eye on the Storm on Misscliks.
Hello!
Hooray! I'm Anna Prosser Robinson. That's my co-host.
I'm Gillyweed SC2! Or Gilly. Just call me Gilly.
Either one.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
we're here with some special guests, and I'm going to mute the stream because you're hearing me twice. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, we're here to tell you a little bit about Heroes of the Storm, to talk about the game itself as it develops in alpha, to talk about how you can play it if you're catching up and you just got access to that alpha, to talk about the competitive scene that is developing around this alpha, and basically geek out about how much we love this game alongside you as we learn how to play better and hopefully become casters at some point.
Yes, and every week we will be bringing on guests to talk about some sort of topic. This week's topic is going to be the Haunted Mines map. It'll be our final map spotlight. We've covered all of them after tonight, so that's pretty cool. We will also have a character spotlight. This week it's going to be Stitches. And then don't forget, after our character spotlight, we always have a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions for our guests, for us, about heroes, about anything mostly, then you can at any time tweet us at you can tweet Anna Prosser or at GillyweedSC2, or you can just use the hashtag StormShow and let us know what those questions are. Then we'll also be doing a custom game that you'll get to see on Haunted Mines, and we'll finish out the episode with a community spotlight. But of course, we are on Misscliks. Anna, could you please tell us about this amazing channel, Misscliks?
Sure. I would love to. Misscliks is this channel of content as well as a website that is just devoted to kind of supporting and uplifting the voices of female role models in geek and gaming culture, with the idea that just we need more of those female role models, and so we're doing everything we can to promote and provide support for them. So please do check out Misscliks. If you like this show, if you like other shows, they have Dungeons and Dragons and some other things in the works, so be sure to show them some love as well, because this is our streaming home. But we've talked long enough without introducing our guests. Let's bring them to the forefront, of course. So, guys, who are you? What do you do? What are you doing here? Why are you here?
I'll let Wade go first.
I am Dreadnaught, team captain and shot caller of Symbio Gaming, and I'm here to teach about stitches and maybe some haunted mines techniques. Other than that, I don't really have much.
You're just here for your dashing good looks and witty personality, and I guess you also play Heroes of the Storm.
Yeah, a little bit. I dabble.
Yeah.
Definitely would say that, man. You got some skills. My name's Kevin. I work at Blizzard on the community team. I do a little work with Heroes, a little work with StarCraft, kind of work on all the games that Team 1, the development team for Blizzard, focuses on. So try to cover a little bit of both. So I got to do a little bit of casting for Heroes at BlizzCon, which was really, really awesome. Of course, with Tim Frazier. A lot of you guys know him, Trixler. Shout out to Trixler. I think he's in the chat.
Trixler hype!
Yeah. Yeah, so super psyched to be here. You guys are awesome. I love this channel. I love everything you guys are about, and the fact that you guys are going to be casting soon. I think that's awesome. Casting Heroes is so much fun. Yeah, you guys are going to be awesome.
We're going to do it. We're going to do it, Anna.
Yeah.
So, and as far as what I'm hoping to bring to your show tonight, I've done my preparation. I've hopefully got some dev stories, some things to talk about. Haunted Mines, Stitches. We're going to do this up. I'm excited.
Yes, me too.
We cannot wait.
And actually something that I meant to tweet, because I think it's going to be really exciting for our viewers, is that Kevin agreed to talk about some of these, what were you calling them, stealth changes or stealth patches?
all them stealth nerfs. Yeah,
yes.
No, we'd love to speak to that whole idea. I know it's certainly been on the mind of the community lately, and I'm happy to go into it whenever, just to kind of give you our perspective on that. But
yeah, and if you're catching up still, there was a patch. We talked about it last week. There's a whole lot to cover. Our episode was really long, but it's on YouTube and has tons of really great information from our friends from 2ARC, and so that's on youtube.com/Misscliks if you need to catch up with that. And this show will be there too.
Yeah, but moving on.
Yes,
it's time. Let's talk a little bit about Haunted Mines. I'm excited. I think there's been a lot of thought going into this map, both on the side of devs. There's been a lot of changes to the map, as well as ideas for how to make it better, thoughts on how to maybe make it a little bit less snowbally, as the term is. But let's start with the basics. We did do a map basics episode way back when, if you guys are just starting out the game. We're going to talk a little bit about the basics of every map, but basically on this map there are two different levels, sort of an upstairs and a downstairs, and at different points you can enter the downstairs area, kill some mobs and collect skulls from them. Once all the skulls are collected, then golems are summoned, one for each team, and the golem's strength for your team depends on how many skulls you collected that round. So if you got more than the other team, your golem's going to be a little bit bigger, or a lot bigger, depending on how many more you got. That's basically, I would say, the objective for the map is just trying to make your golem big so that you can have somebody pushing down those lanes. Maybe we could start a little bit with the timings of the objectives. Where I would like to start is there's 3 merc camps on this map, as well as the golems, or the mercs that are down in the basement, so to speak, the mines. So when do you guys typically think is a good time to do mercs versus going down into the mines? How do you make that work?
Do you want to start, Dread?
Yeah, I can give it a shot. Okay, so the first mines rotation is definitely the most important. Like, the minute the mines open, you should 100% be devoting every person on your team to the mines, because they're so valuable. And you should be concentrating on everything except for the big golem, because the big golem only provides 30 skulls, where there was 70 remain everywhere else. So, and those are very easily soloable. So you need to go down and with your team capture as many as you possibly can, as fast as you can, and then usually there will be a fight, and if you manage to win that, hopefully get more. As for the mercs are more of a defensive thing, or when you have no other objective on the map to take. So ideally you should actually be capturing the golems whenever the big golem is now spawning and moves halfway through the lane. You should then capture your golems, because then it'll sit behind the wall and actually defend against the big golem for your team. And then other than that, it's kind of like if you have a lead, then you should try and cap these and maybe push with them. But there's no like absolute on this map like there are on others. It's a very freestyle map.
So you could actually use one of the merc camps then to defend instead of pushing.
Yeah, it's 100% going to defend, and it will sit at a place where it cannot be killed until the front gate comes out, and even then it usually causes a team to overextend to even try and kill them. So it's a very good defense tool, because they have a lot of damage.
Yeah.
And how big is that window? You know, because I've been trying to do that, and lately I've been solo queuing a lot. So it kind of sucks to try to coordinate your team and be like, okay, don't cap this yet. Don't cap it. Don't capture it. Let it sit there for just a second, because we need it for defense. And they'll be like, herp derp, okay, and then of course capture it. Because everyone knows that when you're solo queuing, you're smarter than everyone else, so you make fun of it.
Absolutely.
But so tell me about, like, how can I get that window exactly correct to make sure I'm utilizing my siege giants to defend as best as possible against the grave golem?
I would say you should definitely wait until it at least passes their second gate.
Okay.
That would be a minimum. I would prefer waiting a little bit longer if you could. I think the reason why everybody in solo queue is like, oh no, we have to cap him now, is because you hear that golem like hitting the ground, that weird audio where it's like, and you're like, oh my goodness, it's coming.
Coming.
Just like look at the bar down below and like look at the time, because you have time.
Right.
Do not panic. You have a gap. So I think that's like a big issue that a lot of players see, is they're like, oh my gosh, we got to get it. Definitely wait till it passes. Like, you'll have the keep and then the gate, and then you'll have the fort and the gate. Wait till it hits that second gate before you cap. 100%. I would wait even longer, like halfway through the lane, just to be safe.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. That sound is really like a motivating sound. That super deep, like bass thing.
Yeah. It's interesting you guys talk about that stuff. There's a lot of things I want to say about this map. Obviously, I think the devs know, we all know, that this, of all the battlegrounds that we have right now for Heroes, is one that has the most potential. Like, the objective can literally mean the game probably more than any other battleground we have right now. I mean, it is so important. Like Dread said, that first golem means a lot. And if you are managed to do really well in the mines 2 times in a row, it pretty much means you've got this game, right? Like, it is really, really, of any of our battlegrounds, like, say, for instance, if you compare it to Cursed Hollow, it has such a greater effect on currently on the outcome of the game. And the devs are awesome about this stuff. They sit back and they say, how do we feel about that? And you know what? There's a part of these guys that I love is that they want so much diversity in the game within the battlegrounds. They want variety, and they love the fact that there could be a map like Haunted Mines where these early parts of the game, the ownership and ability to dictate what's going down in the mines means so much. Like, as long as that's, say for instance, as long as Haunted Mines is the map that focuses on that thing, we're going to have maps that focus on other things. So right now they're evaluating it. They know that right now the mines mean a great deal on this map, have a huge impact on the game right now. I think they're just still asking themselves, is that what this map is? Is it crazy fast? Is the fights that happen early game and when those first mines open, is that really just, do we like the intensity of that? The constant shot calling that happens when you're negotiating the mines in that first round, and like when your team says, okay, back out, we got enough, get back up, we got enough, and the rest of the team says, no, we can push farther. Like, is that intensity? Is that what Haunted Mines is? Is that what makes it great? And I think right now everyone kind of appreciates that it has this sort of urgency and speed that the other battlegrounds don't. And I think everyone's still weighing, how we feel about that and what decisions we need to make about it, if any. Because the one thing's for sure is that they intend to have battlegrounds that have just crazy variety that, maybe you guys haven't even thought that we'd even think, right? And so I love that about these guys. I love that they're pushing to have the game be so varied. And, maybe this is what Haunted Mines is. I know that all the changes that they've made, in fact, this battleground of any is probably the one that we've made the most changes to, I'd say both internally before we even went public with it, and then publicly as well. It's changed a significant deal. And so they've been trying to find the right mix, the right alchemy, and the right, definition of what makes this map uniquely itself. And so, but I think it's awesome. I think it's a really intense map where all that split second decision making has a great impact on the game. So
yeah, I was gonna ask you actually, because we'll get right into kind of strategies and timings and things like that. But you were talking a little bit before we started the show about how this map came to be and like what were the motivations behind it, and you had some really interesting insights into like how we came up with this, basement map and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of this in kind of the nascent stages? Is that how you say that?
For sure. So when the dev team started trying to nail down what Battlegrounds would look like in Heroes, Haunted Mines was one of the first. I'd say it was in the order of Cursed Hollow, which at the time we were calling Ravencourt. So sometimes I still call it that, but Cursed Hollow and Haunted Mines. Cursed Hollow, of all of our Battlegrounds, is probably the one that feels the most like the genre that Heroes is sitting in. It is the tributes. They do have meaning. They have effect. Obviously, if you get 3 and you curse the opposing team, there's an opportunity to make great strides towards winning, make a great impact. But we've also seen times when the curse has meant very little, and sometimes hasn't even had any effect on the game, right? So it is an objective that, if used right and played right, can mean a lot. But we also see teams ignoring tributes, right? Waiting till that third one. And so it tends to be a little bit more of a standard game with a little bit of funkiness. Haunted Mines was the first Battleground that I think they said, let's just go loco. Let's go full on tilt and figure out how we do something completely different. And I think they loved the idea of a 2-tiered map, being able to go underground and trying to see what would that mean for the genre. A lot of times these Battlegrounds start with an idea of like, I don't know, we know it will be different, right? We don't really know until we build it and we play on it and we figure it out, but it will definitely be different. And that is totally true. And so, as they started with that basic idea and the whole idea of like these 2 giant golems pushing down, opposing each other, they called it Timmy versus Tommy. These almost idea of like these 2 huge mechs that just are going at the opposing team and pushing towards victory inevitably, right? You can't stop them. They're eventually going to take over. They loved those ideas and they tossed them together. I think found an interesting mix of how to take all those ideas and put them into a map. And then they started playing on it and trying to polish it and shape it up. And, it started, it's been so long, but it started as 3 lanes to 2 lanes, lots of mercs to few mercs. Of course, the changes in the mines from making it a much larger space to a much smaller space. So it's one of those battlegrounds that has had significant changes, and I think they're still really open to changing it more if need be. But I think they feel like they're getting close. So it certainly has evolved a lot, and I love games. I like playing games on Haunted Mines, and I certainly love casting games. I think they're really exciting and interesting on Haunted Mines.
I feel like one cool thing about this map is you do see the availability for a bit different of team comps. A lot of times people talk about the early game comp working really well on this map, so that's something that I wanted to talk about. Do you see more of the basic comps, Dreadnaught, still the very standard ones on this map in high-level competitive play, or do you see some options for deviating away from that standard comp?
There's 2 large compositions that are done. Usually it's one that's like kind of early game oriented, but I wouldn't totally put it as early game. More so, they aren't dependent on their ultimates. Because in this map, you don't actually know if you're going to get it, or if by the time you do, if you're going to be too far behind. So the last time I played this map competitively, we ran something like a Kerrigan, a Nubarak, a Falstead Vala, and Uther. Every character there is very good without their ultimate, and because you don't know if you're going to get it. The second one would be AoE, CC, and burst type composition, because you're inevitably going to get one moment down in the mines to where there's going to be a grouped up fight. And if you win that, you not only won the mines, gained XP, but then you have a large period of time where you can push heavily. So it's kind of that insta-gib AoE CC dominance, usually an Uther, a Falstad, some kind of maybe a Vala, something of that sort. Those are usually the 2 types. You rarely see any characters who are very lane-oriented or characters who are not very good in a solo type scenario, because in the mines, you're going to have that happen inevitably. So if you get the little Rainer walking around by himself down there, you can likely get a pick pretty easily because the mines are so important and you have to spread.
Yeah, and that early game, that strength in the early game fight, right? The early game skirmishing, I think that means a lot in this battleground for sure. Yeah, super cool. There's a lot of other cool dev things too about the map that I took some notes on when I prepared for the show that I'd love to chat about too. One of the things I love that they talk about is the mental aesthetics that went into the mines themselves. They really did want to have them have this a little bit of a creepier vibe, a little bit of a darker vibe. When you go in there and you're like, we know the opposing team's in here, and you're seeing skulls disappear from the mini map. Right? You're like, you don't know if it's one little dude there or is the whole team down there.
That is pretty creepy.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know, right? And I think they liked that. They liked the sort of mental, mental aesthetic, so to speak, of what the mines were and what they were going to mean. Of course, also from a dev angle, building the map brought a lot of unique challenges and a lot of really funny and weird bugs too, because it really is just one map. And when we first were building it, we were seeing abilities that would fire above ground, that would go below ground, whether that's Sergeant Hammer's BFG or Illidan starting a hunt above ground, but then as someone went down the mines, shifting direction and going through the earth and down underground. Lots of total weird things, but funny stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, so we're talking about this as a super early importance game. If you do get to the late game or the mid game even, what does that mean is going on, and what does that mean you've got to start shifting to think about as someone who's probably prepared to be really good in the early game?
I'm gonna let Dread talk about most of the gameplay stuff.
This is why I ask the questions.
Obviously focusing on it all the time. So.
All right, so that's actually a really difficult question. So, if you are an early game composition and you've managed to make it to the late game, what do you do transitionally, right, in order to be able to win the game better? The answer is you've already messed up. but then your next thing is you need to completely dominate the map and shove the lanes as well as possible. Shoving the lanes in this map is extremely important on every map, but it's really important on this one because it dismounts them on their approach to the mines. So if you've already made it to the late game and you have both the lanes shoved out, you would not only have sight of where they're going to enter, how many are entering, but then they also are going to approach them slower than they would at any other point. So you need to keep dominating the mines, and then you need to understand your quantity of skulls to theirs. So when you say late game, I would say like you're talking third rotation skulls. That's probably late. Second is inevitable. Third is like we've got the late game. So then at that point, you need to be able to evaluate how strong is your golem comparative to theirs, and their team comp sieging tactics mixed with like your leveling, if you have a leveling disadvantage or not. I would argue the number one thing and mistake you'll see in solo queue and you'll see across the game as a whole is they play too passive. They're too worried about their golem versus like yours. Even when you're behind in skulls, it's almost always better to push. Almost always. And that doesn't make a lot of sense to some people, but it really is very important. Because if you think about it, like, okay, a 70-30 first rotation, even second rotation, you're going to be down a little bit of experience because they've gotten some from down below. We'll say you're like, it's a pretty close game. They're going to push with their golem, and what are you going to do? You're going to defend. You're going to 5v5 defend underneath that golem. That's going to be 70. That's a keep down inevitably. You just gave up only like 80 to 90% of a level for free. You've lost all bot lane XP. You haven't been able to stop the golem. Like, you need to be pushing and then back when you can answer with it. But that early on, you aren't going to be able to answer. So almost always aggression is the answer on this map. Always.
It's so cool to hear you say that stuff about aggression, Dreadnaught, because I think that there's something really interesting about heroes in this battleground in particular, where you're exactly right. Like, knowing when to hit the gas and just be like, because it's in some ways it's so counter to what feels the most appropriate. And I think that's where I love watching a game like Heroes try to find its feet. Is the way that it's changing how people even interpret the genre or what's expected of them in the genre. Like, there are moments like that, that you're talking about that don't always make sense, but they do make sense for this game, and can totally actually psychologically even affect the opposing team to the point that it throws them off their game, pulls them back. And you need to know, it's almost like playing poker, right? Like, you need to know when to bluff, when to call a bluff, right? And to have the guts and the courage to go all in sometimes, because you never know. You might just find that you have this razor edge on the other team in terms of guts that causes them to be like off their game and back, and
I've had that exact scenario actually happen in a competitive game. It was us versus GGBB. They had a 80 to 20 skull. We were about to push down their keep, and they already had our keep down. And they were going to absolutely destroy us if we let them push. We pushed out all the waves, took the site, and then moved up and acted like we were going to push with our 20 skull golem, which was weak, pansy, like gonna die inevitably. And we got him there. They all backed, and then we backed up and defended. We had a 20-second, 30-second clear time advantage for free. We were way behind, but we had to play aggressive. If we back out, we lose the game. 100% lose the game.
That makes me like this map so much more. Because
how do you explain it to pugs when you're solo queuing to do that?
You ping the golem.
Like over and over. Ding 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 ding.
I think it'll eventually become a thing, but like right now there's so few people. Like, not only do they now have a professional scene that's followed heavily to actually clone, like you do see in other like parts of the genre. It's like, well, there is a competitive scene, but is it like really what I want to watch? Like, it's not as big, so people don't mock it in solo queue. So right now it's like what feels best for each individual player. And so most of them is they hear that slamming on the ground and they see 80 to 20 and they're like, you need
it's
to go
coming!
back, dude. You need to get back. And that's not really the answer. It's like I think if they all, like, if you sat down and watched any of your replays and thought about the game objectively, you're like, wow, that was a terrible idea. Like, look at how big of a lead they got, and we didn't even try to do anything to turn this around. And that happens a lot. It's like more about viewing the game objectively rather than like how you feel at that scenario.
Yeah, that's really interesting stuff, man. I love watching the game and the players and the ability to interpret the game the right way evolve. It's one of the coolest things about kind of watching this game find its feet. Like I said that earlier, but it really is kind of what it feels like, even for the devs, right? That it's feels like they've tried to create some things that are different and new. And I think watching that happen and evolve, and as the player base gets bigger and bigger, I'm sure there are going to be things that are still going to surprise us. And it makes being a part of the journey really, really cool and interesting.
Do you think this map was always so demanding of that aggression, or did the changes with the mercs where like now people can use their siege giants to defend and that kind of stuff, do you think that made it so that the aggression was more important because you have safeguards in place?
Are we talking first generation mines or second?
I mean, any.
In first generation mines, it wasn't early game wasn't that important. It was like important, but it wasn't that good. It was more about like understanding your advantage in mines and when you need to go in mines and when not to, and how to bait out like the farthest possible. Like if you had an advantage on mines, bait out the farthest possible distance that they have to go to finally finish it off. Like they'll get 4 extra skulls, but then it's like they burn 30 seconds just to make sure it pops at the wrong time. It was all about timing your golem to when you had the biggest advantage possible. So if you ever like watched back then, we would constantly get level 9 and then decide we're going to cap it. It'd be a 60-40, but it's we have a level advantage on you now. We're going to hit 10 and then you can't do anything. You're going to try and defend. You can't take anything. It's a 10-8 like team fight at that point. It was all about timing. Now it's about the merc shift that they did on this new version of the map that didn't influence the aggression that much. It was the size of the bottom mines and the importance of the golem was the biggest thing. Because it used to be so big that you average wouldn't capture a golem to like level 8 or 9 anyways. So, but now it's like it's gonna happen at level like 5. So you have to get in there. So that was the biggest change. The golem shift and everything made it so that it was easier for a team behind to not just get smashed. So it made it to where you could stack a double golem mixed with a big golem, and the sieging power is insane.
Yeah.
The best wave and clear in the game. You can have double mule stacked up on top of it, Tastar, and anything else you could think about, and you wouldn't be able to clear it. So it kind of made it to where that team with an advantage couldn't push it as hard as they could. They needed to take a high risk, equal reward. It just made the risk higher. So I mean, it was a smart choice, like what they did with the mercs. The defense, though, didn't actually change the like comps at all.
Dread, whatever happened with the whole leave a single skull up in the mines thing? Are people even trying that anymore?
They are actually, and it's not happening as much as it should. Like actually, we had a game today in scrims where we said should have left that skull, and we did it. It's happening, but it's not as important. It has to be off the main boss, and it has to be when you have a lead that's big enough to be noticeable. So I would say you'll see it a little bit more, but it's so rare. It won't be like this game. It's like a mines game. Who's going to lead the skull? It'll be more of like in areas, probably like 1 out of every 6 games ish.
Do you leave it when you're behind in mines or when you're ahead in the mines?
See, that's a bold statement. Like this is a really hard question. Okay, so
Okay, explain
the single skull for those who don't understand the single skull.
Okay, so you have to capture all 100 skulls before the golems actually spawn. So the idea is if you have a big enough advantage and you leave one behind, you can then push your advantage on the upper half of the map, spawn it by capturing the bottom one whenever you feel your lead is big enough that you can push with the golem and win the game. Or even just get a big lead, snowball your lead even harder. But the idea of leaving the one skull can work both ways. If you have a team composition that's very better, like a lot better in a team fight scenario, you know you can bait them into a team fight within the amount of time of capping that one skull and like actually fighting them. So you go in mines, you clear mines, and then they'll reset and you back out. You move up onto them, hyper aggress onto their team, get like a 4-for-1 wipe, then you go cap the skull. That's a huge XP advantage and about a 10-second advantage where they can't set up for that actual golem. So then you keep the wave pushed up against them, and now they have a disadvantage of getting up to their golem because the golem's going to push without the creeps. So the golem's going to be taking every turret shot, and it's going to be like getting weakened slower and faster. Like, and you're going to have free reign because they can't move up. So it's like, but if you don't force that fight and you're behind and you left that skull, you lose. You're like falling behind even harder. So it's like a really like, should we do it? I don't know. It's like a high risk, high risk, high reward type play, but it has to be played properly. So it's like really like confusing. That's why this map is so cool. It's like a freestyle. There is no rules. Like there used to be a rule in like Cursed Hollow where you would it would be second tribute, go to boss directly. It was first tribute, pass, capture your knights. That used to be like a rule that you would have to do in order to keep up in the game, but that's no longer this. Like this map has never had that post its rework.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, but it seems like the goal with most of these maps is to make it so there is no hard and fast, you must do X thing in order to win. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I think in some ways, they're often trying to think about, okay, well, we've done this with this battleground and this with this battleground. How do we do something totally different? And, in fact, you're going to see battlegrounds coming up. Of course, you guys saw Sky Temple, BlizzCon. That battleground is a battleground where we're almost saying like being in lane, like the objective means so much on that battleground, like controlling the temples and the damage that they're capable of. It's almost like a mini Blackheart as a tribute, right? And controlling that means so much that like the idea of being in lane, they almost want you completely out of lane as much as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then Tomb of the Spider Queen, which is one we didn't get to talk about a ton at BlizzCon, but it's almost the exact opposite. It's all about being in lane. In fact, the objective happens in the lane itself, and so and again, very fast, like high speed. Battleground itself, which obviously we'll be talking about a lot more, but absolutely variety is king. And maybe we're going to see battlegrounds that are just full 5v5 fighting, or who knows, right? Like they don't want the game to ever feel like it's settling into a particular position. They constantly want it to feel like it's evolving. And maybe some of these battlegrounds are just full on epic. The community loves them, everyone loves them. Maybe some of them are a little niche and not everyone digs it, but some people really dig it. Like there's going to be a bunch of those, and in fact, we've had experience with changing maps in StarCraft 2. In fact, it was a big vision and part of the dev effort that went into SE2, coming out of Brood War, was the desire to say, we need to be changing maps more frequently. And now at this point, changing maps is so crucial. Like it really does have an impact on, every season that we roll in SE2, and changing maps is very, very important. It keeps the game fresh. It changes things up. And so I think with Heroes, they're trying to take what they've learned in SE2, but amplify it even more. Obviously, these objectives mean so much more. There's even more dev time that goes into making sure these objectives themselves make sense, as a thing. So it's not exactly a one-to-one, but I know that they feel like adding map variety was very successful with SE2, and they know it will be successful with Heroes just because it will make the game constantly new and change things up. And like someone said earlier, some heroes are going to be really great on some battlegrounds. Some might not be as great on others. I think that too is of interest of them, as well as trying to make the most of all these different situations. So.
Well, on that same note, too, we promised our viewers via Twitter, we've been doing a lot of talking about changes and patches and all this stuff, and there's been this cry of, like, why the stealth patches? Why do you do things that you don't tell us about? Why do we have to find out in-game? And so you had some really interesting perspective on,
Yes.
Or on Reddit.
Yeah, because you were talking about how these... the devs are really interested in getting feedback from the community and making these maps balanced. So tell us about stealth patching.
Yeah, stealth patch is the dreaded stealth patch. I just want to be really clear to everyone watching and anyone who catches the VOD. Like for us, there is no such thing as an intentional stealth patch. Like that is just not a part of our vocabulary. It's not a part of anything we want in terms of how we want to communicate to you, the community, the people who are passionate about this game. It's exactly opposite. It's exactly polar of our goals. And I would like to speak about how it comes about. And I think some of the learnings we are taking away from a patch like the most recent one we had. First off, I'll say, for this team, building a game like Heroes that's just constantly new content, constantly evolving, constantly changing, it has been a growth effort for the team. Like it's a very different pipeline of game production. With a game like SE2, it's boxed game, very different. Heroes is constant. We're updating the game all the time, adding new heroes, adding new skins, adding new battlegrounds, changing it up all the time. So I think there's been a cultural change within the team to have to adjust to that. And then, of course, in some ways, a bookkeeping change as well, right? How are we tracking all of this fast-moving machine? It's a very, very challenging task, especially with all the varied teams that are working on all the different elements and checking changes into builds. And, oftentimes for these devs, changes will be put into internal versions of the game that don't go public for months, and in some ways, they might not even remember that it wasn't in live, right? Like it's really strange. Like when you bring some of these things up to the devs, they're just like, how did that happen, right? Like it's so counter to what they intend. It's just us figuring out how to get our processes correct around this beast, this really challenging task. And I think we're learning a lot. We're obviously seeing where we have our weaknesses, but I do want to stress that we never intend, especially important game-changing elements, to go by without you guys knowing. And a good example of that actually is the changes to XP with the towns, right? Taking it from when you actually kill the keep or the forts and setting it out to towers and all the rest, all the little bits, right? that was something that was in the BlizzCon build, right? I know you guys observed it. I heard the community talk about it. It was in that build. The change was there. We all knew it. And yet it's even still that was not in, right, the notes for the patch, right? So like that's just an example of a very like I'm just trying to do justice to the fact that we don't really intend these things to be but we are doing our best to try to fix it. And I have to give a huge shout out to Spirian, who right now is kind of shouldering the task of trying to collect all of these bits of very important information. And by the way, he knows they're important. He knows how much you guys care about him. He hunts them down. He tries to get it all, but it actually is an impossible task. So he has an impossible task to try to wrangle all that stuff. And he's doing as good a job as he can. And I think, obviously it's a much bigger problem than one person can solve. So we're going to look at it, and we're going to try to do a lot better at it with that problem, but certainly not intended. So our apologies. And, like I said, we're going to try to do better. So if you guys have any questions about those stealth patches or stealth changes, we'd love to answer them. We don't have to get into all of them now, but I can try to get some answers for you guys, more information. The type of blog that you saw come from John Hodges recently about some of the hero changes is the type of explanation and information we'd like to bring with patch changes. Obviously, he focused on the most recent blog on hero changes, but we want to talk about meta changes as well, and the reason why minions are stacking more, or the reason why XP has changed in various ways, or why core shielding is the way that it is, right? Those are not
from
things
0 to 7,000 suddenly.
Those are not things that we intend to go without reason or without justification. So maybe I can even work to get some of that out soon. So you guys can hear some of that from the devs themselves. But it certainly isn't intentional, and we definitely want you guys to know everything that's being changed in the game as much as we can humanly manage to get you that information.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that since, again, we are technically still in alpha, and I feel like we talk about this every week, but it's like...
We have to remind ourselves.
Yeah, because
alpha.
It's so easy to be like, why aren't you telling us all of the changes to this game? And then it's like, oh, you're still building it. Like,
right.
from the ground up, it's in the process. So, yeah, I hear you, man. Makes sense.
And everyone cares a lot about you guys knowing those things. And so in some ways, like I was saying earlier, like, as painful as it feels for you guys, it's actually kind of painful for us when it happens too, because we don't really mean it to come across that way. So again, we'll get better.
Well, guys, if you're watching and you do have questions about any of that stuff, we have someone from Blizzard here, which is really exciting. So if you have any of those questions, tweet them right now with the hashtag StormShow, because we are going to get to our Q&A here pretty soon. I've been kind of going on and on, so I know we closed up talking about team comp and some timings in this map, and I know we talked about a few tips and tricks. So I know, Kevin, you absolutely know what is going on with this map, but Dreadnaught, if you had to predict whether this map is going to change more in the future or how it's going to change more in the future, where do you see the future of this map going?
Or even where you'd like it to go.
Yeah.
As well.
A hybrid between the original and the one now. I think both are too polar in both directions. I think this one's too dependent on early game, and the other one was too snowbally on like your advantage. But I felt like the other one, you actually had a better ability to come back when you were behind. It was just all about being smarter. This one, you fall behind, and because the objective is so tiny, there's no hope of getting the colossal objective, which pushes so hard. So you get a -1 like level lead, and then you get a tier down, say it's like a 13 to 12 or even bigger, a 16 to 15. You all go into mines. They don't even have to really clear that well. All they have to do is find you, eliminate you from this realm, and proceed to win the game. So I think this should be a hybrid between the two. The original with the larger bottom end of the map. I like how it shifted in terms of I guess gold distribution. I thought that was a lot better. It rewarded you for spreading out and getting them, but at the same time, it also makes it so the other team can instantly react to you. And I think there should be a middleman between that. And then I think the only other thing would be they nerfed recently the damage to the golem, which was interesting to hinder the ability to siege, but its slam hits for like a brick now. Like it's blasting you in the face.
I
So-
guess I can speak to that. I think there's actually an issue going on with that. We're looking at that because that is. I think there's something.
It kills me as
That's
Tyrael.
Endgame, any squish, it's half health.
I know, dude. We've been watching dudes melt to that.
Yeah, it's just like, boom.
I just was reading a thread about it today. Like they're looking at it. I don't think that's.
That actually happened. I brought a totally new friend into the game, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Watch out for that slam!
then-
You know, it'll be like it'll kind of hurt you, but it'll be okay." And then boom,
Just
dead.
kidding.
Boom.
At least it gives you that golem respect. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
exactly.
Respect the golem, so that pound means something. Like coming up out of the ground.
Well, I do like that it kind of brings in, I used to WoW raid, and I really enjoy that. There's some elements to you can't just stand and hit something. You've got to,
Yeah.
move out of things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially if it can kill you.
I think I do believe there's an issue with that being too much damage. We're looking at that for sure.
Cool. Well, shall we move on to Stitches? Anything else that we didn't cover, Gilly?
No, do you guys have any other tips and tricks, anything like that, before we move on to Stitches?
Reward or remind players to always play aggressive. Other than that, I got nothing.
It's a good
All
tip,
right.
man.
You
All
heard
right,
it.
cool. You heard it here. Play aggressively.
Well, and it's
Ping a
funny.
lot. Ping a lot.
Ping, yes, ping repeatedly. Even though that drives me nuts when people. I'm like, ping once and I will come. For crying out loud. But it's interesting. It just again, I'm sorry. I'm just really into trying to like this map because I have really hated it, and now I'm like getting interested with these new strategies. But I think it really relates to something that comes up a lot for us, which is that any decision is better than indecision in this game.
Yes.
So that really relates to aggression, where on this map, if you can just decide, like, okay, team, we're just doing it, we're going in,
Yeah.
that sounds like that may yield a better result for me, because I tend to play with StarCraft players, and they tend to want to defend everything all the time. And,
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
this whole idea of having a shot caller is really, really important, right? Because maybe she, whoever, is gonna make a bad decision, but if you're all in on it, I think you're still working on that muscle reflex that I think is super important for this game.
Sorry, you can keep going.
Yeah, no, I think that it's the way to practice playing, I think, and then your shot caller's gonna learn too the difference of like how to do their job better. I think that's really really an interesting muscle to work out, is how to listen and move as a team, even if you have those questions about like, I don't know if that's the right call right now, but still just knowing like at an instant to be like, yep, we're there, right?
Cool.
So,
On the first time I was ever on Town Hall, actually, I was given that kind of scenario that you're talking about. They asked me, what do you do as a shot caller to improve? And like they gave me credit for this quote, but it's probably somebody way smarter than me said this before. But it's essentially 5 guys to a bad call is better than 3 to a good one. They'll always live by that idea. Because the like lack of decision making and everything else, like 3 think they have the right idea and 2 are like, I still don't know, and they want to try and do something else. Like that is far worse, especially in this game, than any decision you could possibly make.
that is the essence of team right there. I got to be honest. Like, I really love that about teams and the idea of leadership. And you don't really know you have a team unless you know they have your back regardless. And you know that they know that they're going to let you lead and you're going to make the call if you're a shot caller, right? And again, that's part of the job of what it means to be a team is to be all in together. And then, if it's a fail, if you lose, you will be able to unpack it as a team. But I think when game's on, and when you guys are expected to be working as a team, you need to be acting as a team and not divisive, not, it's all in. And I think that's what's really cool about a battleground like this. That's one of the cool elements is learning to do that a little better, a little tighter, a little more in unison.
Absolutely. Well, how does Stitches fare on this map?
Well, he doesn't have a huge advantage, but he's not at a disadvantage by any means. He's good because he has really strong early game. But he's like hook-wise, there's got a couple of moments where he kind of has an advantage, and he's good because he's good at defending sieges, and he's also good at forcing sieges with the first build we might cover tonight. So he's pretty good, but he's not like, oh my gosh, you have to take Stitches.
What would you say best uses for Stitches are in a team comp?
Best uses in a comp, like as in to counter theirs or to complement yours?
Either.
The only way I would say he can actually complement your team composition if you're heavy CC burst oriented. So we'll go pre this patch. A great composition would be a Brightwing Nova Stitches. Those three together. You land one hook, you polymorph with Critterize, hit a W pinning shot with 25% damage, mixed with the snipe. They're almost 100% dead. Doesn't matter the target. A rewind will 100% assure it. So that was a good version. He rarely synergizes with a team, though. He's way better at being a counter to the opponents than he is a complement to yours. I mean, the hooks are good, but it's like, especially in this patch, it's not like oh man, get the hook, burst them down, all right, let's go. Usually you're burning too many CDs for that.
So what would you be countering? Who would you see in your enemy's team comp where you're like, oh, we're going to need the Stitches?
Tassadar, Kerrigan, Malfurion, Raynor, Vala, and
Dude, you were countering Nazebo pretty well with it, but then I saw the big Stitches counter with the zombie wall.
Yeah. No, yeah. If you can't get close to him, like the zombie wall to stop the hook is brilliant. Yeah, that wasn't my game, though, but yeah, I had a game where I ended up hooking to deny the Zebo ult, but then it's like if you can't get in the backline to use your 16 talent pulverize, there is no stopping it. So
right.
You can kind of counter it, but it's not like a very good counter comparative to like the other characters I just listed.
Sure.
So just a second to zoom out, because we are trying to make this, until we get everybody into the beta or into the full release of the game, we want to make sure we're catching people up to speed.
Sure.
So if you don't know Stitches is a melee warrior character, which means that he's going to need to get right up close to you, but he does have this Q, this hook, that he can throw out and pull someone to him. So there's a lot of initiation that he can do. And he is from Warcraft, of course, and he's listed as a medium difficulty, so he's not going to be one of the easier ones to play. And he's actually, like, especially with that hook, you're going to need to have skill in actually landing those hooks. So it's going to be, I would say, on the harder side of medium, maybe.
Yeah, I would put him as really the harder character perfectly in the entire game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those risk-reward type heroes where the hook and the playmaking potential out of that hero can swing games. Like it really can, but it has to be played well. And like Dreadnought was saying, there might not be as many hard, clear advantages to picking a hero like Stitches, but in the hands of a great player, it can definitely make the difference, all the difference. So,
So we talked about his hook, but would I guess Dreadnought, why don't you go ahead and tell us just briefly what's his W, his E, and what are his heroic abilities?
His W is Slam, which is a cone in front of him, which just does AoE damage. His E is Devour, which he can only use on creeps in the game, which actually heals him for a large portion, I think 10% of his max health, or 20. And then his ultimate is Putrid Bile or Gorge. Gorge is a single target isolating. It will suppress them and allow you to move them, and after a couple of seconds it will remove them from your stomach, dealing damage and displacing them. His other one is a movement speed bonus where he will drop stuff behind him, which will do damage and slow your opponent.
Absolutely. And then he has this
only
trait
use
too.
Devour on creeps.
His E, it can only be used on creeps. Oh no, I lied. It can be used on characters too.
Oh, I was like, what?
Hey, minions. Yeah.
Oh
minions.
yeah, it does more damage to minions is what I meant to say. Not only.
Oh, okay. Cool.
It does like like a huge burst of minions, nothing to heroes.
Yeah, 320 damage to minions or 60 damage to heroes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then restores 20% of your maximum health. And then he's also got Vile Gas, where when damaged, he emits a gas cloud that persists for 4 seconds, and enemies who enter it are poisoned for 12 damage per second for 3 seconds.
Is actually part of the reason he's so good at damaging. If you look at any damage charts with the Stitches in the game, his passive is the reason for that.
Because he's just constantly emitting damage, basically.
Constantly, and it's a lot of damage. And the build you're looking at right now actually applies it with your W as well.
Yeah, he just smells disgusting. You do not want to stand next to Stitches. It is bad for your health.
So much gas.
So walk us through these talents that you picked. Why did you do this build for Stitches? Let's start with number 1.
The standard one?
Yeah, this is the standard build. It's the increased damage on your Slam. It's largely because post level 4, you can outtrade anyone in lane in the entire game, minus maybe Chen. You kind of go 50-50 with. Your damage is insane. It's AoE, and you have great wave clear. So that's mixed with the increased damage by 50%, and then 4 with the adding your passive with your W.
Okay.
And then other than that, the benefits only there's really no other benefit, honestly, other than the damage and the wave clear that it provides for you
Okay.
and allowing you to trade.
And
Yeah,
what
and
about at the
obviously-
next? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to say, obviously, Gorge as the choice there. I mean, you could get the AoE damage from the other heroic, but Gorge is such a important.
Yeah.
I went with 2 builds, actually. I think, like I was saying before the show, you'll see 1 from now on. That's not the one we're looking at. This is
Sure.
the original Stitches, I guess.
Okay.
So then the Putrid Ground is applying your passive. So now you can apply your lots of damage AoE onto a large group of people. Level 7 is Tenderizer, which allows your auto attacks to slow your opponents. Great for like hooking and just auto attacking. They cannot leave your grasp at that point. 10 is the ultimate choice of Gorge. This was largely around pick-oriented Stitches. You would hook and then Gorge and then isolate and then proceed to hopefully burst that character down. 13 is Relentless, and that's because there's very few good choices on that talent tier. Relentless is really good, but I mean, other than that, there's almost nothing else to go. It's just so you can Gorge and they can't stun lock you down. So you can't remove their like teammates. So say you eat a Malfurion and you start walking back to your team. If like a Muradin comes down and just stun locks you, like Relentless will help you to move away from that as fast as possible. 16, this is really important, but not 100% go to. There's either a extended hook, which is fishing hook, or the slam pulverize is the name of the talent. The pulverize is an AoE, increases the damage on your W, and then also applies a 0.5 second stun, I believe, to everybody that gets hit. And so this is really dependent on your team comp and their team comp. Stitches without, like, if you get fishing hook, you have terrible team fight. You have Gorge, and that's it. You're useless. You have 1 Gorge, and that's the end of it. So Pulverize allows you to have a team fight presence by providing an AoE stun and a decent amount of damage to it. It's not to say that you must go it, because the increased hook range is very good in pick compositions. Just know if they engage on you while hook's down, you have a very weak presence with Stitches.
I see.
And then 20 is Resurgence, because everything else is really that good. Blink's pretty good, but not that great, and Resurgence is just kind of broken. So, I mean,
Yeah.
kind of just take Resurgence no matter what.
I mean, not dying is usually helpful in the game.
Yeah,
Usually.
and then
Or
dying
not staying
coming
dead.
back in
Yeah.
5 seconds later is even better.
That's what
So,
I mean, yeah.
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 Okay, so you're saying that this build was kind of the traditional build, but right now we're not going to see it. We're going to see this second build. Why is that?
That would be a shift in the meta as a whole. And the buff to Imposing Presence has allowed this second build to be very strong.
Okay.
The second build is essentially a level 1 is Chew Your Food, which increases your E, which then will synergize with your level 4 talent, which is Amplified Healing. Because this one, you have a different mindset. You aren't looking to pick somebody and run them away. You're looking to zone the squishies and make them run through your bile and then not be able to kill you at all. So you're building much tankier. So you don't have near the amount of damage with your W, for instance. You're going to be able to heal a lot with your E. Then you're going to have Amplified Healing to accent your E and your level 1 talent choice. Level 7, Tenderizer, because it's just too good. Bile now is to slow your opponents and get the movement speed and zone them. Level 13 is Relentless, again to accent your bile and be able to constantly move, not get locked down, so you can make sure you E your correct target. And then 16 is the huge one, Imposing Presence. So this allows you to be almost unkillable. Their auto attackers will sit in the back half of the map. You isolate the front half, and you just run back and forth and move up to the tanks and start slowing them off your damage while they run through your bile and auto attack you. Now their auto attacks are decreased by 50%, and their movement speed is also decreased. They can't get past you, but they can attack you. It's a 50-50 lose-lose, like no winning for them at all whatsoever. It's very, very strong. And that was with the buff that just came last patch. And then Resurgence again, because it's just too good.
Great. So if people, are still catching up on those patch notes, tell us what was that buff that happened for Stitches?
I believe the original Imposing Presence was 30% debuff. The only character in the game who had a 50% debuff was Tyrael. And it was only applicable when his shield was actually up. So this is, no matter what, the debuff to their attack speed is by 50%. Which if you get against, like, we'll say an Odin, or a Tassadar Archon, or a Raynor with everything popped, they'll hit you and you'll just laugh. Because you're just like, the next auto is so much slower. Like, like, the minute there's a Bloodlust composition, go this build without a doubt. You will win the game.
Cool.
Cool.
So is it only their attack speed is slowed only 2 stitches, or is it slowed?
Yes, only
okay.
if they hit stitches, which is why Bile makes you a target they have to hit because they can't move past you. Like they're too slow to move up on you. You do a decent amount of damage, so then it's like their tanks either have to back out 100%, which you shouldn't allow them to do, being the stitches in between them. You should body block and use your tenderizer to not let them get past, or their damage has to move up, which is then going to have to move through your passive mixed with the Bile, which if you look at Bile, it actually produces a pretty solid amount of damage.
That's a lot of damage, yeah.
There's like, it's not a very good situation for them. The only way it could really like work very well to counter this kind of stitches would be end up having 2 of your damages actually flank, while 1 is only like in the back. So then it's hard for him to decide where he should zone. So one of the damages is getting on the actual kill target no matter what. That's the only way to really play around this.
I see. The Storm, just because it's so much better than everything else, even buffing your Bile.
Yeah, it's too good. Like the heal, you could get the heal, and it could be awesome. And it would synergize with your amplified healing. Like it would be pretty cool. But as a whole, it's like, is that really worth being able to move forward and like be in a really scary scenario where I possibly have to sacrifice myself for my team? We win the team fight and then respawn to proceed to 5v2. It's not, like there's very few options in the game. I would almost say there's no character in the game you should take anything other than Resurgence on. Well, I guess tanks-wise. I'm speaking tanks, not...
Tassadar?
Yeah, specialists or supports are a little different, but tank-wise, almost 100% should take Resurgence.
Cool.
Okay.
Well, guys, if you are looking for these builds, these were built on heroesfire.com. We always give them a shout-out because their site's absolutely amazing. It's how I learn anything about building talents, so be sure to check them out. And we'll put these links in the chat as well for you guys.
Heroes Fire hype!
Heroes Fire hype! So now I think we're at the point of our Q&A.
All right. Well, we've got a lot of questions this week.
Yay!
I'm really excited about that. So I'm just going to start nearest to the bottom. So we've got a couple of questions from Rogue Commander 9. He's basically talking about the idea that right now in Heroes, heroes like Arthas and Stitches are very health. They've got a ton of health. They have some CC, and they do a lot of damage. Is there a thought that maybe that this is too strong, and then they're keeping they're doing too much damage versus those squishies that are supposed to be doing more damage, or do you guys believe that it's on the right track?
I can let Dread speak to it as an opinionated player if he'd like. I think from the dev perspective, I think it's we're always watching that stuff. I think they definitely want distinct differences between the heroes, even within their various classes. I mean, I think obviously there's a certain role a warrior is supposed to be playing on the field of battle, but each warrior, I think they do also want to have some strengths and weaknesses, or at least some differences compared to one another. So, I think it is something they're paying attention to and trying to figure out how to maintain diversity while still maintaining role clarity within particular hero types. But I don't know of any. I don't know of any changes in particular that are happening along this regard right now, or how concerned the devs are on this issue right now. But I know that they're always watching and paying attention to feedback, and obviously looking at numbers and stats and all kinds of information from the game to make sure that they're hitting their goals on this stuff. So, and obviously are more than willing to change whatever they need to make sure that the game is maintaining its integrity from a design standpoint.
Cool.
Dreadnaught, thoughts?
This is, I don't know. It's weird because I main warriors. Like, I am the warrior guy. So I'm like, yeah, I'll solo you as Arthas, and I'll love doing it.
Yeah.
But, do I think it's balanced? From a casual perspective, I can't really answer this question. I don't honestly have an answer for you, and that's likely where you're coming from. So I don't know. I can tell you from a competitive, I think that they do a little too much. But do I think it's like game breaking or anything else? Not so much. Like Arthas, if you remove Envenom, he now loses a lot of kill potential, gank potential. I think that might be a little weird. He's the only warrior to get Envenom, mixed with having some of the highest base damage in the game no matter what for a tank. So I think Arthas is a little weird. Stitches does do a little too much damage as well. Like Arthas is like, he's got a low health pool comparative to his tanks, but he has the highest self-healing. So theoretically, if you chain him down, he's one of the easiest tanks to kill in the game. But Stitches, I think, is a little off. His damage is too high, and his survivability is one of the highest in the games for a tank as well. So he provides a lot, and he's not lacking in CC either. So it's not like he's losing in any. He's got all three areas covered. So I would agree that I think Stitches is too far. The Arthas is very team oriented. If you like put him in competitive, everybody would say he's strong. Do we think he's like totally broken? Probably not. He definitely needs some nerfs in one of those areas. He either loses CC, loses health, or loses damage, or healing, I guess. But yeah, they're a little too high, but not as high or broken probably as he feels, or he or she feels that they are.
Keep in mind too that as you're talking about Arthas and some of these abilities that are obviously shared across multiple heroes, the abilities like Envenom, searing attacks, these other abilities. I'm not saying that they are going to change, but I know that there are some kind of replicated talents that I think are in some ways artifacts of like early builds of heroes, or a progression of our hero development, trying to make each hero unique. And again, I don't think there's some hard rule on the dev team that says they can't have a similar talent on one hero that they have on another. But at the same time, they do want to diversify these heroes as much as possible. So I keep in mind, I think that we're still building this game, and figuring out how to tune these heroes the right way is an ongoing process. There's just no way to get it all right out of the gate, especially when we need players, of the caliber of Dreadnaught and his team to be pushing these guys to limits. And so part of this is the devs watching, seeing, and figuring out what they do need to change. And then also what I was trying to get at initially is still hitting their goals from a design perspective to make the talents as unique as possible, as specific to the heroes as they can be, those kinds of things. And that's a process. And I would say they're not sure they're not there yet, so.
I think that goes back to our age-old motto of it's still alpha.
Yeah.
Soon to be beta, though.
Yeah, that's true. Beta. No longer an excuse. We're coming after you. Beta.
That's right. January 13th. Don't forget it.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm so
excited. Climb to 1. Let's go.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I really like this question from Anthony Gutierrez at ET Decius. At Decius, sorry if I butchered that. HOTS is very team-oriented, so it's hard to measure individual contribution. How can we self-assess other than win-loss record?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Loving it.
I ask myself all the time, depending on my game, I'm like, man, I'm really good at this game. I'm actually exceptional at this game.
I'm constantly did I do okay?
Exactly. Yeah. Or I sit there and I think, am I actually really bad at this game? Do I just get carried all the time, and that's why I think I'm good at this game?
Yeah.
I don't know. Good question.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's obviously more objective things coming to the game. We talked about some of the stuff at BlizzCon with ranked play, Hero League, of course, which is designed to give you a little bit more of that measured feedback of exactly where you're sitting in the greater landscape of players. I don't know how didactic that ranking is. You're not going to learn from that ranking exactly what you need to do to improve. I think that's an interesting question. How can we, even as game designers, help you know how to get better? I think some of that is surfacing the right statistics right in the end game and the score screen. All of that stuff that allow you to assess where you are against other players. Maybe even then it's not as straightforward as saying you need to do better at this, but you can say, hey, my damage is way low. Why is that? What can I be doing? Is it how I'm stutter stepping, or should I not even be stutter stepping? Should I be committing more to my how I'm dealing damage? Do I not need to be so scared of pulling away all the time? Maybe I should stick in fights more. Some of that stuff, I think that's just going to have to be a little bit of probably community education. Maybe we can do a little bit to put out some education along those things too, to help people know how they can improve some of that stuff. But I do know we're trying to surface the statistical information required to at least see where you stand in the greater landscape of players. And so that will be improving. And of course, ranked play, like Dreadnaught said, is coming soon too. So
Great.
How do you measure how well you're doing, or do you just measure as a team? Dreadnaught, do you do any individual assessment as well? I'm sure you do.
No, yeah, we do. The numbers are deceiving, especially from a solo queue perspective. I honestly, the only way I feel I can genuinely answer that question, and I feel like it's kind of a cop-out, so I feel bad. I've been thinking this whole time for the right answer is game knowledge. The more game knowledge you have, I think the easier it is for you to assess where you fell in its game. And I think another thing to really make sure of is make sure your ego doesn't get in the way. Because that's a really big thing and a really easy thing to do is don't distance the reason the game went bad to something else. Try and put it towards yourself. Like, don't get down on yourself, but just try and be realistic. Like, I messed up here. I easily could have, like, if you're a Vala and you got strafe and you got interrupted in 0.5 seconds, you did it wrong. Like, don't be like, well, the Murden was just, like, in my face and he stunned me up. Like, try and be honest with yourself. It's probably, like, those are the only two things I think I can objectively answer, like, that question with. Other than that, it would be, like, don't count, like, when you're, like, look at hero damage. If you're a support, concentrate on who needs to be CC'd the most, and if you CC'd them at the right times. If you're a damage, consider your damage outside of laning phase, not in it. If you're Vala, you're going to have the highest laning phase damage in the game. You are one of the best lane harassers. You're going to do that. But if that doesn't carry to teamfight phase, you've messed something up already. And if you're a tank, concentrate on the same kind of concept that you did with us, like a support. Not so much direct CC and like when you CC them, but like, did you zone properly? Did you bring the correct target? Did you engage at the right time? Was it a 5v5? Did you engage with your team directly behind you? Were they at a disadvantage? Like, just try and like think each role has an objective job, and how well did you fill yours? Because the numbers aren't always accurate. I can honestly say Vala is definitely a skewed one for a lot of solo queue players.
Yeah, and one of the things that I would say too is there's a lot of really great heroes play going on right now, and watching people who play heroes similar to you, watching what they do, how they work with their team. I think all of that stuff, like again, it goes to what Dreadnaught's saying is about learning game knowledge, or even watching players who are already somehow, even if you don't know how, better than you. Play their heroes, especially within their team compositions, I think is just, again, that self-learning process. But there's some really great heroes being played every weekend. I mean, there's so many great games going on, and we're watching these guys push the game to the limit that we know to date. And, hearing people like Dreadnaught talk about the game, it's great even for me just to hear those things. And I think these guys spend more time with the game than I don't even have the luxury of even thinking about spending that much time playing the game right now, just because we're working on so many other things. But so there's a lot to learn from people like Dreadnaught, his team, all the guys who are streaming this content, ZPs, other folks who are out there constantly streaming and teaching. There's just a lot to be learned from the community too. So it's good stuff out there.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, does that conclude our question phase? I know we're kind of running a little bit late, so we want to get into playing our practice session.
We'll have to maybe catch some of the other questions next time.
In-game? We can do it in-game.
We could do some in-game ones. Yeah, that'd be cool. All right, I'll ask a question every time I die, so hopefully there won't be very many questions.
I have a bunch of other little funny anecdotes too about both of our topics, so maybe I'll throw some of those things in during our gameplay as well.
That'd be awesome, because we're going to be on Haunted Mines and with Stitches. So
sure.
Absolutely.
Sounds good.
Please pick auto attackers.
We can work on that. All right, cool.
Here we go.
Well, we're going to go to a commercial break, and we will have to take the stream down while we do this. But bear with us. We are setting up a cool custom game for you on Haunted Mines with Dreadnaught playing Stitches. So that should be pretty cool. Stay tuned, guys.
We'll be right back. See ya.